immigrants. I'm the immediate past president of the South Asian Bar Association of San Diego, and as former SABA president, I led the organization's first effort to educate San Diegans about hate crimes and discrimination against Sikh Americans. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Sunny Kakkar, founder and CEO of Seva Tech Inc., and is also the founder and executive director of Seva Truck. He is based right here in the DC metro area. So Sunny, please tell us a little bit more about your work.
Okay, can you hear me? Can I be heard? Is that good? Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for including me. Really happy to be here. I think we did an event like this, or you guys hosted an event like this, I believe, a year ago at University of Maryland, and you got a lot of the students together. I really applaud the efforts. Again, I'm Sunny Kakkar. Grew up really in the Maryland, DC area. I started Seva Tech in 2003. We serve primarily the national security missions for the federal government. That includes law enforcement as well, and other civilian agencies. About 5 years ago, we started Seva Truck, which is a food truck that we serve to Title I schools, which are basically part of the national lunch program. So again, I'm really happy to be here. Anything I can do to help some of you young folks in really launching your careers or looking at opportunities that are out there, happy to do that.
Awesome, thank you, Sunny. Next is actually Sunny's wife, Dr. Seema Kakkar. She is an associate clinical professor of medicine at George Washington University and also works with Seva Truck. Dr. Kakkar, please introduce yourself.
Hey, Sat Sri Akal, everyone. Thank you for having me. I am also really excited to be here because I grew up in New Zealand where we didn't have a lot of Sikh Sangat. In fact, most of my Sikh Sangat was actually from coming to Sikh youth camps in the States in the summer holidays. So I'm really excited to see that you guys have this peer sort of mentorship program and the Sangat and support system. So I'm a physician. I went to medical school in New Zealand and then came and did my residency here at GW. And I'm an internist, so I see adults. I teach at the medical school. I teach clinical medicine. I teach culinary medicine. And more recently, I have started a community service learning program in line sort of with the Seva principles. I have the good fortune to combine my sort of religious and professional interests. So happy to answer any questions and offer any guidance.
Awesome, thank you, Dr. Kakkar. Now we'll go back to the West Coast with our next panelist, Riva Narula, who is a vice president in the investment banking division at Goldman Sachs. Riva, go ahead, tell us about yourself.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. I echo all the other panelists. I think this is great that you guys are hosting this. I was in everyone's shoes not too long ago, and I think these forums are always awesome to just answer questions, kind of hear other people's career trajectories and kind of how they got to where they are today. So thank you for having this. So I graduated GW in 2010. I've been kind of in the finance world ever since then. This is my third role out of college. I'm currently at Goldman Sachs in their investment banking division.
Awesome, thank you. And then very last but not least, we have Mr. Janmeet Bava, who is the director of the technology portfolio for Capital One's flagship web and mobile servicing applications. Janmeet, please introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, Sat Sri Akal, Janmeet here. I'm new to the DC, Maryland area just in the last 4 years. I've lived primarily in Richmond, Virginia prior to this. And I was in Canada before that. So it's been a sort of a windy road to come over here in this area. But really glad to see this effort by all of you young people trying to bring together this great group, great Sangat, and learning from those who have already gone before you on this journey. I mean, I can sort of echo some of the comments that Seema made, which is like when I was going through my education and early in my career, if only I had this type of a network, it would be super awesome. We didn't really have this kind of a support structure in place, and I missed that. I absolutely do miss that. So, you know, kudos to you, all of you, for first of all setting this up, and then everybody who showed up over here to listen to us. Thank you all.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to some of the moderated questions. If any audience members, again, if you have any questions for our panelists, please feel free to ask them directly in the chat below to Sunmeet, and she'll get to those during the question answer section. So our first question is, how did you decide on your current field or career? And we'll start with Vani and then move down.
So, yeah, having grown up in the United States, my early years in the 1970s, and those early years were in the state of Ohio. So at that place and time, you know, like was mentioned before, there weren't other South Asians, much less Sikhs, to be found. And, you know, many adults around me called my friends by the N-word. I was also called by the N-word. And so from a very early age, I became acutely aware of the fact that people are not treated equally based on their appearance. I also watched my father, who wears a pagadi, face many occasions where he was treated disrespectfully because of his appearance, from being called names to being viewed negatively after the Iran hostage crisis and then post 9/11. Then there was 1984, Operation Blue Star, and the riots in India where Sikhs were systematically attacked, honestly. And I had family members living in Delhi and other parts of India. So for all of these reasons, social justice became a very important part of me. And, you know, I really just wanted to be a part of social justice and change in the United States. And so that was what brought me to the law.
Thank you. We can go to the next panelist.
So, you know, a lot of you guys are probably thinking, how does what I'm learning right now, what I'm going to school for, does that really translate into a job that I can get in the market? I kind of went through the same thing. Many of you guys have probably also faced the stereotype or the kind of 3-4 professions you can actually select being a part of Indian immigrants. So my parents immigrated here. I was 5 years old. And so we had a couple of options. It's like engineer, doctor, lawyer. I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor like my wife or a lawyer. I kind of muddled through engineering, and I did it reasonably well, but I became an engineer, mechanical engineer in 1995 and 1994. When I graduated, the electrical engineering market was actually fairly hot. Mechanical engineering was not. So I did not get a job for a while. And what I do now has nothing to do with mechanical engineering. The good thing is there's a lot of options out there. And as you start building up those various skill sets, the opportunities start to open up. What I learned in mechanical engineering was problem solving. How do you take a big problem, make it into smaller problems, solve those little problems, and really compile them into to solving the larger problem. And so my career today was really just fortune, you know, from the guru, whatever the various paths that we travel, there's opportunities that kind of appear. And Seema was mentioning she was from New Zealand. When we got married, my career had still just kind of started in the mechanical engineering area. And I took a year off when we went to New Zealand. We lived there for a while. And then when we came back, we moved to Texas, and a few things just kind of happened, and I got into the market that I'm in now, which is building software. We build national security software, the company does. So it wasn't a direct route to get there, but I think that my mechanical engineering background really set the foundation for the career that I'm in now.
Dr. Kucker?
Yeah, so, gosh, I did think I just got set up. So I'm also the daughter of immigrants, but I felt like I did have a lot of choices. My father is actually a scientist, a PhD in entomology, which is a very unusual field, but was a world expert in entomology. And my mom had a master's in philosophy and English and religion. And so I think they encouraged a lot of openness to what I wanted to study. But for me, it was actually a very personal journey. And I'll share, when I was 13, my dad was on sabbatical, and I had come to the States and done part of middle school here. And I had missed a bunch of school back in New Zealand, and one of the things I missed was Latin. And so I had to catch up on Latin in the library. And one of my classmates, who had missed a lot of school, had leukemia. And she wasn't a very close friend of mine, but she had, we would study Latin together, and we became good friends. And she was super smart. She was actually much smarter than I was, and that was very clear to me. And we became good friends, and she was determined to become a doctor and discover the cure for leukemia. Anyway, I'd come back to the States in the summer. In New Zealand, the summer is December, January. And when I went back home, I found out she had passed away just a couple of days before my 14th birthday. And so for me, even then I didn't know I wanted to become a doctor. But what was clear to me that, Waiguru had taken somebody who was actually much more gifted than me, and who was determined to make a difference. And I decided then that no matter what, I was going to be the one to decide what my career was going to be. So that whatever Waiguru had given me, I was going to be the one to have all the choices. And so I actually studied really hard, and I have to decide sort of straight after high school. And I took a year off, thought about coming to college in the States and med school here, but in New Zealand it's 6 years straight after high school, and it's paid for by the government pretty much. And I decided to go to med school in New Zealand. But it wasn't a single choice, it was a bit of a journey. And the journey for me was being the one to have the option to decide what I wanted to do. And that's kind of what determined my effort till then.
Awesome, thank you. We'll go to Riva in San Francisco.
Sure. So I was really inspired by my father. So my father worked in finance for over 20 years. And growing up, I just saw him, go to work every day. We actually moved around quite a bit growing up because of his job. So I grew up in Poland and England, and I just began to see all the opportunities and different aspects of the world he was able to see through his role in finance. So that's kind of what gave me my first inkling that I might want to go into the business world. And then when I went to college at GW, I decided to major in computer science and business. I felt like I thought I wanted to go into business, but I also had this interest in computer science and technology. So I thought by kind of combining the two, maybe that would help me kind of find where my career trajectory was supposed to go. And then when I was at GW, I actually did a bunch of internships. I did them in IT, I did them in finance. After trying them both out, I decided I liked finance a little bit better. So after graduating GW, I joined GE Capital's finance team. I did that for 2 years, and finance is so broad that I began to realize that I wanted to kind of move more into the M&A or investment banking world based off of what I had seen in my role at GE. So that kind of took me to 2 different roles and brought me to my role currently.
Awesome, thank you. And then now we'll go to Janmeet.
Yeah, my journey was kind of very similar to some of the folks that we've heard in terms of growing up. We thought there were only two choices. Either you become an engineer, which my dad was, or you become a doctor, which my mother was studying to be. She did her pre-med before she got married. And she took a curve and became a teacher afterwards, after she got married. So those are really the 2 options initially. But I was smart enough, like my sister was, to become a doctor. Whenever my mom asked, like, what are you going to be when you grow up? You don't study so much. My answer was, I'd be a jamadar. You know, I don't care. I'll get a job. Jamadar is janitor, if you don't know. So then one day, my dad got this keyboard little thing. It was just literally a keyboard that hooked up to your TV, and you could play games with this keyboard, right? There was nothing else to it, no computer, nothing. It just had the CPU built in. And one of those days when I was playing, the thing broke down, couldn't play any games, it just crashed. But I didn't give up. I just kept, hacking away at the keys, and eventually I got to a console, and that was like, whoa, I'm seeing behind the curtain over here. This is great. I just realized after that incident that this is my passion. I don't care what I do in life. What I want to do is play with computers, and it didn't really occur to me what that would lead to. I did not know. There were no guidance. My parents never thought I would make a lick of money doing what I was doing. They didn't really believe me that I would actually earn a living until I graduated and got a job. So I just stuck with it. That was my passion. I enjoyed coding so much that I just stuck with that. Eventually got into the technology sector.
Great, thank you. Amazing stories here. So I think we've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but how has your Sikh identity affected you in the workplace? How has Sikhi inspired or impacted your career? And then we can just start again from the top, and then you guys can just flow into the next speaker.
Okay. So how has Sikhi inspired me? So I mentioned earlier that a turning point for me was 1984, feeling like not only were we different as immigrants in the United States, but even in India, we were still different. So 1984 definitely had an influence. But not only that, I think for me, Sikhi in my mind was not just a religious belief. It was also a social justice movement of its own time. Hundreds ago, Sikhs stood up for freedom of religion, stood up against discrimination in the form of the caste system. The gurus created Gurumukhi as a tool for literacy, for the promotion of literacy. And of course, literacy is empowering to all sorts of people, regardless of background. And, the rights of women were promoted by standing up against the practice of sati. So, to me, Sikhi and social justice are clearly interwoven. But then from a workplace perspective on a day-to-day basis, I think of, I was just thinking, Sunny, you mentioned your business's name has the word seva in it. And seva is everything. I mean, for me, my job is as a sevak. I am a tool, hopefully, to help somebody else find their path to a better life in the United States. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect is that I have a picture of Guru Nanak and Guru Gobind Singh in my office. And they are there to remind me of, when things are very difficult, I feel like I'm fighting really hard for a client and I'm struggling. I look to Guru Gobind Singh and I realize, whatever I'm facing is not nearly what he faced. So I should take a little comfort in that and just press on and persist, because that's what he did. And really, I think you'll hear from everyone, persistence pays off. No matter what your path is. And for Guru Nanak, I think, he represents to me the kindness and compassion that we all need to, show to other human beings, our clients, even people who are our adversaries. Treat other people with dignity and respect, even when they're not treating you that way, because that also will pay off. You have to maintain your own sense of dignity and self-respect by treating others that way.
So, I grew up in America. I had no Sikh students that went to the schools that I went to. Right from elementary school, I didn't see another Sikh person in school until college. And I had a lot of cousins, so we would get together on the weekend, and Sikhi was very important to us. We went to the camps, we did a lot of kirtan. We had Babaji at home. My mom did a lot of part. So it was always part of our life and a major central part of it. And so I struggled in the beginning to how do I incorporate the amazing, very simple, yet very powerful belief system that we have into our day-to-day life, that it wasn't mutually separated. How do you bring in that character that the Guru is so amazingly displayed and showcased throughout their entire lives, and which is still relevant and powerful today? How do you incorporate that into your life? And so when we started the company, Seema and I talked about it, and so Seva was the kind of the essence of what we wanted to build. We're also serving the federal government, serving missions, serving taxpayers, serving U.S. citizens, and people trying to immigrate here, et cetera. And so Seva became the central theme of the company, and really going above and beyond about focused on the service that you're providing. How can that service make a difference? And are you focused on the outcome that it delivers? And so that became the culture of the company. And so right from the beginning, we incorporated, and that's, those are the various tenets. How do you bring in equality into your company? How do you use what the Gurus have taught us as the leadership skills that you need to lead? How do you inspire others to, without saying that these are Sikh beliefs? They are just powerful beliefs. Doesn't matter if you're Sikh or you're non-Sikh. Of hard work, of community service, of going above and beyond, of making sure that the person next to you gets credit, staying humble. I think all of those things became what we call our core values across the company. And we've always done a lot of community service. Every month we would have a charity that we would sponsor, a lot of volunteerism, et cetera. And then in 2016, we thought we need to take this to another level, that we really need to do something to make a difference in the community that we live in. And so that's when I actually stepped down from being the CEO. I hired a CEO to run the company. And so, amazingly, we have the nation's capital. We've got some of the most wealthiest counties right here in the DC area, Montgomery County, Fairfax County, Loudoun County, et cetera. Yet there is tremendous amount of food insecurity. And there are schools everywhere where these kids just don't get food. And so we felt like that was an area that we wanted to really take our Langar concept, which I really have never talked about Langar in my professional setting. But rather than talking about it, let's go do something about it. And so we bought we built a food truck out of a FedEx truck, and we embarked on this journey about right on Vaisakhi in 2016. And so I ended up eventually coming back and running the company. But what was amazing that we got this organization and initiative started. And just more recently, after COVID, we are mobile. We can basically get anywhere. We've changed our model. We don't go to schools anymore and have kids line up for obvious reasons. So we actually cook the food every day, Monday through Friday, and we package that food and we go to the schools, and then they safely distribute it. So that's how we brought the concepts of Sikhi into our profession, how it's become part of the day-to-day of how the company operates. It's amazing to see non-Sikhs talk about Seva in the same way that we do in our Gurus. The way Guru Nanak Sahib started the tradition of Langar so long ago. It's that small investment back then is paying off by the millions and millions of people that really believe in that concept, Sikh and non-Sikh alike. So that's how we've been able to bring that day-to-day reminder of who we are, what our core values are as Sikhs, and how you can actually bring it into your profession. Outside of that, I think that I'm in the market here. I'm probably one of the very few turban Sikhs that are in these very large conferences, technical conferences, etc. And when I visit with customers as well, it's been my biggest advantage that I think around here for sure, and I think a lot of the larger cities, they know who Sikhs are. And I think that there is a tremendous benefit to our identity and the character that sits behind that identity and is at the root of that identity that really can propel careers. It certainly has mine. And then with that, you're allowed to do, you're given the benefit of doing so much more for communities that perhaps you would not otherwise have an opportunity to do.
So I guess medicine in of itself lends itself easily to the idea of helping people and the Sikhi principle of doing that. Medicine in of its training, as it was traditionally and even now, takes a lot of giving of yourself just even to do the training. Like Vani, I was actually very inspired by visual images, and all through med school on my little notice board above my desk, I actually have a picture of Bhai Kaneyaji. I think it was from like an old Sikh calendar that I had cut out, and you know, it wasn't a fancy picture, but it's a very lovely picture, and I found that to be really inspiring. I actually still have that picture. It's not up anymore, but I still have kept that. In terms of my career progression, I think things that have happened, an interesting trajectory, maybe perhaps unplanned, but I now find myself teaching, which I think I feel by teaching medicine and then sharing clinical medical skills, how to break bad news, how to show empathy, how to be compassionate, is part of, you know, how we feel as Sikhs and how to treat everybody fairly and equally and lovingly. And I've been fortunate now to have the opportunity to combine what we do at Seva Truck in a way in principle by having the opportunity to teach a culinary medicine program at GW, and then also the community service learning. And again, bringing that idea that everybody who's learning to be a doctor needs to also understand the community that they serve, and also actually put in some hard work into understanding the people that they serve. So I'm really fortunate to be able to combine those principles. And then the last thing I'll say is we have actively looked for opportunities to do in our interests, and there's a Maryland chapter of Operation Walk, which happens to be formed and run by two Sardars. I think actually some of their family may even be on the call. And we've been really fortunate to go with them around the world. And every other year so far, we've been going back to India, to Ludhiana, and practicing medicine there, replacing joints, and having the opportunity to serve other Sikhs as well as just, you know, people all around the world. And that's been a really special way to combine Sikhi and medicine for me personally.
So for me, I think the way it's kind of come into play with my career and just my life more generally is just growing up outside of the US. You know, oftentimes we were the only Sikh family, sometimes the only Indian family. And now with my career in finance, there's not a ton of Sikh peers I have in the finance industry. So for me, it's really about educating my other colleagues about Sikhism. You know, when I take off the Saki, not telling people I'm just taking the day off, but really explaining to them why I'm taking the day off. When I talk about my weekends, if I went to Gurdwara, sharing that with my team and with my colleagues, just to raise awareness about Sikhi and the religion, and kind of that being a big part of my life. And then I think just on my day-to-day, I think Sikhi has always been a core part of me. So, you know, as I'm a mentor, a manager, a colleague to people that I work with, I just try and instill a lot of the Sikh principles of, you know, being humble, being open and honest, earning an honest career, helping others. Those are kind of just fundamental to my everyday that I try and implement in my day-to-day as well.
my case, very similar to what Wani said in terms of the 84 riots. When I lived a few of my early years in Cameroon. We moved to New Delhi early 84. And 84 is when the genocide happened in New Delhi. And that left a huge scar on me. So I went into a shell, didn't want to talk to anyone. Eventually moved to Canada. And that's where I started to open up got some strength over there to really open up. And then I realized, instead of trying to hide away, I need to put it out there. I need to educate, the people that are around me. A lot of the stuff that you hear people say or do, it's because of ignorance. Once I started engaging with people and talking to them about why I wear a turban, why sometimes I wear different colors, or yes, I do wash it every couple of days, and so on. Like once you start to get past those early conversations, people really are just curious, at least here in the West, right? And they just want to engage with you, want to talk to you, and realize that that's a really good sort of way to make connections, build your network, talk to more people. And when I got into my career, I realized whenever I was in a room of 20, 30 people, a meeting finishes, and every time, a couple weeks later or whatnot, everybody knows who I am because they see you with the turban, because I was literally the only one in Capital One in the early years. They see you, who you are, they know, they recognize you through your face. And once, by the way, I learned the technique to remind people of what my name is, because that used to be the hardest part. But I learned the technique to help people remember my name, and that never went away. And once they know who you are, then they just really want to know, they want to engage with you, and so on. That became sort of my go-to thing, where I could then talk about, hey, anyone in distress, call me. Anyone in that's what this turban is all about. And my kara reminds me to be honest and be faithful at all times. So once I started talking about these tenets, people started paying attention, and it just became a thing where they paid more and more attention. Every time somebody went to their neurologist or cardiologist who was a Sikh, they would call me and go awesome guy, I met him, and really good. I would engage in discussions with my dentist, and my dentist, after 14 years of going to him, he was like, Janmeet, if you ever think of opening a business, I've got plenty of money to invest. Can I invest in your business? I'm not planning on opening any business. It's I love talking to you. My identity became the thing that through which people got to know me, my faith, who I am as a person, my principles, my values. That just became the door to open other doors. So I definitely leverage that all the time, and I probably know 4,000, 5,000 names at this point in Capital One, because I know so many people and so many people know me, and people call me out of the blue and tell me about when they hire somebody who's a Sikh person and how awesome they are too, and they will make it a point to remind me, this person, I hired this person, or I had a preference for this person because they're Sikh, because I work with you and I know your values, your ethics, and that just becomes the thing that they identify or assign to the identity.
Awesome, thank you. It's really inspiring to see that Sikhi can be incorporated within our workspaces rather than something to be afraid of or nervous about sharing. So thank you for that. Well, we're going to move on to the question and answer section very shortly, but we have one more question for everyone. So just make sure, if you have any questions for the panelists, please direct them to Sunmeet in the meantime. But our last question for the panelists for this portion is, so a lot of our audience members are college students or are just starting out in the workforce. So what is one piece of advice that you would give yourself if you were in college now? And how about if you were just starting out in your career?
So if I were to start college today, and I hope that I shared this with Kieran, but I definitely shared this with my brother when he was going to school because it was different for me. I was pretty much told, you know, it's engineering or medicine. There's no other option. You know, I definitely knew that I wasn't going to become an engineer. I considered medicine and then, you know, decided against it. And so, you know, I stuck with one particular major throughout college because my parents said, well, this is medically related, so at least it's sort of reasonable. And that was psychology, but I was really not happy with the field. And I was jealous of other people who were going off to law school. And that, eventually I basically decided, well, that's ridiculous. Why should you be jealous of other people? Just pursue what you want to pursue. So the point is that I think it's a good idea to explore all the different majors that you think might be of interest to you, because in high school you only learn, you know, very basic things and your exposure to the world is very limited. So take the opportunity when you're in college to spend the first year or second year looking around and seeing what else there might be that you never thought of that could turn into your passion. And then in terms of starting out in the workplace, I think it's very important. You know, I made the mistake of not being too active with other professional organizations. And I think they can be very beneficial to you from a very early stage. Why? Because you end up having friends in your own field who can, you know, provide you with guidance in terms of not just opportunities by sharing, you know, with you certain job openings, but also career paths. You know, there are different, you know, roads that you can take. Like, for example, as a lawyer, maybe you want to work in-house somewhere. Maybe you want to become a judge. Maybe you want to become a professor. Maybe you want to practice, you know, have your own practice. There's so many different ways different directions that your career can take. And so if you are communicating with other people who are in your field and they are your friends, they can help you with that kind of guidance. And then the final thing is that on a personal level, you know, you will find that you're going to have family one day and family responsibilities, and trying to balance that with your work is not easy. But having friends who are in your same profession is very helpful because they can, you know, even if they don't have a solution for you, because there's not always an easy answer to the questions of how do you balance, but at least you have sounding boards and people who are there to talk to you and talk about how they managed their own situations. And it's just sort of a support network. So I think it's very important to have professional networks like the one that you're creating, you know, beyond your own field of expertise, but also with people who have the same professional area of interest for those reasons.
You know, I never thought when I was in college that I would be doing what I'm doing now, because it has very little to do with what I was doing or what I was studying. You know, everyone says go with what you're passionate about. I'm trying to be, you know, I want to be practical in what advice I can give you. When I interview people, one of the things that I think impresses me the most beyond technical skills is communication, their ability to convey a message, and also their writing skills. And I do believe now, I have little kids here, maybe not that little, but 16, 14, and 10. And I just see that they communicate through incomplete sentences on texts. And I'm a little concerned about how they're going to develop their communication abilities in the real world. And so as many, whether you like it or not, doesn't matter what profession you're in, if you can take as many English classes as you can, you know, debate team, oral kind of speaking in front of large groups, those skills are going to help you no matter what career you get into. That's going to be kind of, I would call it a little bit of the lost art, being able to communicate in an email effectively, being able to get in front of somebody with confidence and speak. So I think it doesn't matter if you're a physician or engineer or an artist or whatever you want to be, that skill set I think is important. It's important to me as somebody who hires lots of people, and that I look for that. I test for that, in fact. It doesn't matter if they're a software coder, I'm still going to test on their ability to communicate effectively. Because in fact, most of the challenges that we have in virtually any profession is poor communication. That's what leads to more challenges. There's no technical issues. Janmeet will talk about that as well. Most of the problems are not technical. They are communication oriented. So I think that's one. Take your Sikhi belief system and let that be known to people the way Janmeet was talking about. His character, his values, he doesn't have to go and wear, have a Nishan Sahib, carrying that around all around Capital One. He does it through his actions. He does it through his day-to-day routine and how he treats other people, how responsive he is, etc. So bring those values into your career, whether you're still in college and working with your professors, or you've actually started your career. Go the extra mile. Let people know that you're reliable, that when something needs to be done, you're the first person that jumps in. Those kind of skill sets that you don't necessarily learn in school are the ones that I believe become accelerators in careers. So that's my 2 cents.
So this is a hard one for me because a lot of people do come to ask about, medicine and careers in medicine. And I never want to discourage anybody, but I would say you've got to love whatever you choose to do, more so now than ever. Medicine's actually quite a difficult field, right? The training, all the hoops you have to jump through, and they're sort of never ending. But I love what I do. I love, and so I wouldn't discourage anybody from doing it, but I think the road is harder, perhaps, than I realized. It might be good that my, 18-year-old self didn't know exactly what I was getting into. And I think there are challenges perhaps beyond what one could anticipate. And that's probably the biggest lesson I wish I had known, that one can't anticipate what life is going to look like. You can only plan so far ahead. And then you have to be agile and flexible, to borrow some of the Janmeet's technology and Sunny's vocab, because I never expected to be living in a different country. I never expected to be a professor or to have I never expected COVID, and literally lying awake at night wondering, should I go to work tomorrow? My kids are stressed out. I have in-laws that live at home with us, and I have a duty to my patients, all these kinds of ethical issues. And going back to Sikhi, I would say to my old self and to all of you, in your 20s, as you're working so hard on your careers and your professions and finding your place and your identity in the world, I would say devote a little bit of time to growing your Sikhi, whatever that is for you. Whether it is doing a little bit of regular Path, whether it's learning Kirtan, whether it's continuing something that helps you grow your spiritual self. And that's different for everybody. But devoting a little bit of energy or time, as you're devoting 90% of your time perhaps, thusly of your time to your own spiritual growth. Because I think that's not something we should be putting off till we're older or till we've settled in different parts of our lives. Because I think if you do it simultaneously, it helps you make decisions, other life decisions, whether they're career or partner or family or other things. But if you do those things simultaneously, I think it helps guide you. That would be the advice I wish I had been given very explicitly. It's sort of, for me, it happened more by accident, perhaps, but I wish somebody had sort of said, you really need to devote 10% of your time to doing this.
So something I wish I told myself when I was in college was to just not stress so much. I think, I used to be obsessed with, I want this job. This is the job of my dreams. Or, I had friends that were applying to med school or law school and they had their top pick. And you end up stressing yourself about getting that top pick because you think it's ideal and you think that's what you need for the rest of your career. And what I learned was like, you don't have to stress. I mean, your future career is going to be a series of different steps that you take, and have faith that there's opportunities that are going to come your way that are going to take your career in a completely different way, and that might end up being your passion. So just don't stress. I mean, it's a marathon. You know, you don't have to do exactly what you think you were going to do right out of college. Take a risk, do something slightly different. If you don't like it, you can always pivot. You know, your first job out of college or whatever you do right out of college isn't going to identify the rest of your career.
Yeah, plus one to everything that everyone said. I'm going to focus on one additional thing that I want to talk about, which is self-doubt. So think of life as a maze that you're going through, and you all know how to get out of a maze, right? If a maze that you've never gone through, you just follow a path, which is like take all left turns or take all right turns, and eventually you'll get out of this. You've been given the tools to get out of the maze. There's an algorithm associated with it. Similar to that, in this, where you are, all of you, you have a privilege, you have knowledge, you have values, you have principles that you've been given. All of these, and then awesome schools that you're going to, this network that you're associated with, these are all tools that are the basic ingredients of how to get out of this maze, if I might call our life a maze. So you have to have faith in the fact that these ingredients that you have with you are going to get you through. And yes, you need to leave some time aside for exploration and you know, enjoying life. Like you definitely need to smell the flowers and play with the kitten and, you know, watch the butterfly and all that stuff. That should not distract you from the fact that you have a goal, you have a passion, and you want to achieve that. So you may have your parents or your friends or whoever come to you and go, you know, why are you doing this Bachelor of Mathematics and Computer Science? Why not computer engineering? Because that's where all the jobs are, or better jobs are, or more money is. You've been a senior manager for the last 3 years. When are you going to be a director? You know, is that your goal? That kind of thing. So a lot of times people will come to you and give you advice or tell you what their expectations of you are. And what I'd say is remove that self-doubt, remove that doubt, remove the doubt that other people give you. You should follow your own passions, your own journey. You need to enjoy the journey, but you should follow your own journey. And I want just I'm going to just leave it there and go, like, you have the tools necessary to be successful. Just have faith in that.
Thank you, panelists. So that ends our moderated question section. So now I'll pass it over to Sumit, who's leading the question and answer portion. So again, please feel free to ask any questions in the chat below to Sumit, and she'll answer as many as she can.
Hi guys, thanks so much for joining today. I'm going to start off with a couple of specific questions, and then we'll go into a couple of general questions that we had for all the panelists. So the first question, this student is interested in completing an MBA in finance and wanted to know Riva's stance on the difference in value between an online master's degree versus completing a more traditional MBA.
Sure. So I think, at least what I've heard about MBAs, I think a lot of the benefit comes from the networking that you get from being there in person, and kind of where people end up being post their MBA. So I think there's benefits to both, but I do think there is like this life experience you get from with them on weekends that you get by being in person. So I think from a life perspective that might be a little bit more beneficial, but from a career standpoint, I think firms look at them very equally. I think you know, when you're looking at someone's resume, whether it's online or in person, does it really make a difference? But I think as a development in your career, kind of doing it in person is helpful if that's an option.
Cool, thanks. Our second question is for Sunny Uncle. The student wants to know, if you were in your early 20s today and were looking to break into the federal contracting space with an entrepreneurial mindset, would you take the 8A digital modernization route, such as a ServiceNow partner, or do you believe that there is a more scalable and sustainable alternatives in the IT world?
There's a lot of a lot of options and a lot of opportunities available in the federal market space. I think the more focused you are on very specific capabilities, the better you'll do. The market has changed dramatically over the last 15 years that I've been in it. This 8A program, just for everybody else's benefit, is a program that the federal government has to promote minority-owned businesses to enter into the federal space and provide services. The good thing about it is it's just a pool of companies. It's a 9-year program, so companies are entering into the program and companies are exiting the program. And there's a lot of opportunity within this bubble. But I think the way you differentiate yourself in getting into that business is going to have to be through laser focus on what you want to offer. I think gone are the days where, oh, that's a huge benefit to be an 8A company. We were an 8A company way back, and I really didn't get a lot of a huge benefit from that program, partly because I was unfocused. And I felt like, oh, by getting into the program, all of a sudden the federal government's just going to start giving me contracts. It doesn't work that way. So I think leverage your own personal skill sets. I also believe if you're super technical, lead with that in terms of building the business. But if you want to scale a company, you got to be willing to let go the things that perhaps you're the most passionate about. Like I was somewhat technical, but not nearly as I've not kept up those technical skills. So my vision was to actually build and scale an organization and feel like I'm not going to be a direct bill to a customer. And so I don't think I really ever have. I've seen other folks that have entered this market and they are really super smart. Technically, they're brilliant. The problem is harder to scale because once they get into a customer, the customer wants them and then they're not able to scale. So great market to be in, always will be a great market. It's not like Silicon Valley where I think they have much lower lows and much, much higher highs. I think the federal government's fairly stable, but within that environment, you have an opportunity to really be a differentiator if you can laser focus. And so you talk about ServiceNow, you can, right? ServiceNow is an area where you can really put a lot of your focus in. It could be Appian, it could be some other low-code solution technology, it could be whatever. But I think being as focused as you can, otherwise you cannot legitimately sell your services thinking that you're a small organization, yet you can fulfill any requirement a customer has. So yes, great route to go in, laser focused.
Thank you. Our next question, the student had a question for Janmeet. He says, which coding languages does he believe are the most important to learn when starting out in the tech world? And what resources has he seen to learn these languages effectively?
The coding languages, I would say right now, Swift, Kotlin, Java, they're still hot. But honestly, I would say get ready for a lifetime of learning. I would not recommend that you learn a specific language and like sort of become an expert there and just stop right there. You need to get into a mindset of learning new languages, adopting new languages constantly. I mean, over my 20-something years, I probably have learned more than a couple dozen languages and coded programs or applications in more than a dozen languages. And so, yeah, just get ready for that. Oh, and resources. There's unlimited amount of resources online. I would not pay anyone to teach you programming. Once you know programming, go on YouTube. Everyone's teaching a course right now on YouTube. Or Coursera, LinkedIn training, all of it.
Sunny Uncle, the student was wondering, wants to get into business and is asking, what are some of the biggest challenges you had when starting your business? How did you overcome these challenges? And if you were to do it again, how would you go on about it differently?
You know, when we started the business, Seema and I were having our first child. So it was a tough decision to actually make this leap. And I think it was Avani that mentioned when you choose careers, you also have to look at what's important in your life. And so if I was going to go down this business route, see him as a physician, who's going to raise our kids? Like, who's going to really spend on the time on the other things that are important in life? So I think we struggled to make that decision, but I think we came to a good balance and a good agreement on how we would move forward. You know, there was a lot of struggles in the beginning. That was one, just to kind of take the first step in going forward, knowing that, listen, Chardi Kala, if it doesn't work out, my parents were close by, that we would have a roof over our head. In the beginning, it's really difficult to actually get started. But I think that's what I was mentioning earlier. You got to be focused on what you want to start with. And there are a lot of different businesses out there. And I embarked on a services-oriented business, which has less capital upfront that you got to invest. You're taking a lot of your personal time. So you're giving up capital if you have a great job, which I had, to give that job up and then go ahead and start from scratch. That was a risk I was willing to take. Borrow a little bit of money to get the company started, but or you can go down a product route. And if you want to really build an exceptional product these days, you need to raise a lot of money. So there's so many different kinds of businesses, and all of them have very different challenges. But you got to surround yourself with people that can be a good sounding board. Really important. Really think about what you want to accomplish. What's your end goal? Is it just to start a business because you want to make a lot of money? You don't want to work for anybody else. You've got this great idea. What is it that's inspiring you to kind of move out and do something? Listen, we want entrepreneurs, not only in the Sikh community for sure. We want as many entrepreneurs as possible. And so use these kinds of professional networks, use the folks across this panel and other people in your network to really become a sounding board so that those obstacles that you face in the beginning, you can overcome them. I don't know what I would do differently. I think that I have no regrets in life. And so I know that every time that there's been a period in my life where there's been something disruptive, and that disruption doesn't have to be bad, by the way. Every time there's been a disruption, whether it was, we got married and it changed my entire environment, or we came back and went to Texas, changed my entire environment, it does allow you to take the blinders off of the day-to-day, and your peripheral view starts bringing so many more options. So that's one piece of advice I wish I had known earlier, that whenever you do hit a brick wall, when you turn around, all of a sudden you're viewing things that you didn't otherwise even know existed, because they were in your rear view mirror and you're charging so fast ahead. So I don't think I would change anything, but I have realized over time that when there are some obstacles, you got to look left and right. And I think that those options will start becoming more clear to you.
Thank you. Our next question is for Vani. As an entrepreneur, what was your process? And as an immigration lawyer, what are some of your biggest challenges and obstacles that you have faced in your career?
So I wish I had a good answer for the process question. I'm not sure that I had a very great process. I actually started off practicing at a very large law firm because that's where everybody supposedly went. That was the right thing to do. Out of law school, guaranteed salary and all that sort of thing. But I was pretty miserable. And so, I never really planned on having my own firm. I just ended up doing it because I was so frustrated with the environment I was in at the big firm. I think I made more mistakes than somebody who would have planned the whole process out. So I'm not really sure that I have a great idea about process. If you're talking about how to develop clientele, I can tell you that your network, this network is a start. Anyone that you meet who becomes your friend is part of that network, becomes part of your client base. People in your own profession, other lawyers will refer to you, will refer clients to you, and that's really how I built up the practice. I'm sorry to say that I wasn't, I didn't have the business mind. Maybe Sunny or Janmeet had that. I didn't have that. But I sort of muddled through and persisted, and it worked out. In terms of I think you said what was the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge was really what Janmeet mentioned, which is self-doubt. I think we all, think that, well, I want to do X, but I can't do X because I'm not thus and such type of person, or I don't have this skill. And, there's something called the imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome may follow you throughout life. But what you really need to know is that, whatever skill you don't have today, you can build it, you can develop it. It's not, President Kennedy is known to be, a great speaker, but he wasn't to start off with. When he started off in politics, he was terrible. And his father got him a coach, and he practiced and he practiced, and that's how he developed the skill. So if there's anything that you really want to do, you can do it if you decide to put in the effort and the time that it takes to, and have the patience with yourself as well to develop that skill. You can do it. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but.
Yes, thank you. Our next question is for Reba. The student wanted to know about your most important lesson or your highlight from your time interning as a student at GW.
I think the highlight was, that was my first kind of interaction with the real world outside of, college. So I think that was cool to kind of see the professional setting, kind of interacting with folks that were so much more experienced than I was and learning from them. So I think that was the highlight. And also, interning while in college, and especially people in the DC metro area, you have DC right there. So, there's hopefully a lot of opportunities for you to intern based off of the different things you guys want to do. I think just balancing college and a job is great. And I think it kind of helps you rule out some of the things you thought you wanted to do and that you don't want to do. It helps you build a network for, a role outside of college. So I think there's definitely tons of benefits of interning while in college. So I would definitely recommend it if the opportunity arises for you guys.
Awesome, thanks. Our last specific question for the panelists is for Seema Auntie. This student wants to pursue a career in medicine and wants to know what other principles of Sikhi do you see yourself implementing in your career as a physician?
Gosh. So I think, I'm trying to think what I haven't included, but I think the principles of seva that we already talked about, and compassion. And I think I would just add that the opportunities in medicine are so great, and the careers are so varied. So I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to start this community service learning and to build a health justice curriculum, a health equity curriculum, which was one of my particular interests, partly because of our Sikhi principles. So that was one thing. And I think one of the things I've learned, I teach a standardized patient program as well, and clinical skills. And one of the things I've learned is that, and somebody else mentioned this on the panel, that our Sikhi principles, well, they're so dear to us, and we think of them, as our Sikhi, they're really all universal principles. And applying them to medicine, applying them to teaching has been very helpful to me. So I teach one particular series on death and dying. And as morbid as that sort of sounds as a title, it's a really important thing to teach medical students on how to handle their own emotions that come up, and then also how to really support people through the one inevitability of life, despite how amazing medicine is. We face a lot of death and dying, and I've been able to draw on my own principles on that, and even as I've gotten older and more experienced, and perhaps trying to shake that imposter syndrome. And it's not just women, it's not just South Asians. I think it's a lot of people. But I've become a lot more confident, and comfortable in sharing my own principles that are not necessarily imposing those on others, but just sharing. So somebody will say, well, what did you do when your first patient died? And I said, well, in my religion, we have a prayer, ardas, and I kind of did a mini version of that. And basically it just translated to, right? So like as this patient in front of me is kind of leaving this world and going on whatever their soul journey is, may Waheguru just kind of bless them. And I was able to share that, not all the translation, but just a general idea. And then somebody asked me when I was a resident, I was really good at running codes, whatever that's worth, but this is so calm when someone's dying in front of you and it's all chaos and you're the one who's kind of running everything. And I'd say, well, right before before I'm going to call time of death, and I ask everybody, do you have anything? Have I missed anything? Does anybody want to add anything? I said, in my heart, I have a little prayer that I do right before I'm doing CPR or I'm running something. And, we have that Virakiami Talage, right? Like whatever's going to happen is going to happen with, Waheguru's hukam or grace, but I'm going to do my absolute best, and if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And I think I've learned again through experience, and it's very humbling that, some people survive, which I can't explain scientifically, and people who we never have lost, we lose. And I think it's been very humbling for me to accept that, we're just doing whatever we can every time because that's our job and that's our duty. But it's really Waheguru who decides all of this. And I think that's sort of a concept I've been able to apply in medicine and also in applying teaching medicine without really talking about religion. Right? Just about spirituality, about people's belief systems. But I have found that being able to share my own has actually been really helpful and for a lot of people, so, especially myself.
Thanks for that. So before we wrap up, we just have two general questions for any of the panelists. So feel free to answer as you wish. The first question is, have you ever been faced with microaggressions and or discrimination in the workplace? And if you have, how have you dealt with it and moved forward?
Yeah, I can address some of that. Tell you, yes, definitely there have been microaggressions all through my career, and I took a more lenient approach towards it earlier in my career than I am taking now. Definitely the environment is different, especially over the last 4 or 5 years since we started talking about gender parity and so forth. Just the conversation, just the fact that people are talking about it made it easier, or talking about gender parity a few years ago, made it easier to talk about other kinds of injustices, social injustices. And now, especially with the Black Lives Matter, everything is in play. Like, we should talk about everybody as an equal. The entire team, the organization needs to be diverse and inclusive and create a sense of belonging. That is just a common theme now. So it's much easier to talk about it. In the past, I would say, personally, I never stood for it. I would say, like, I find that offensive, or that's not something that we would want to, not language we want to use it here at Capital One or in workplace and so forth. But you didn't have the organizational support back then. You didn't have the your managerial support and things like that. Now the environment is changing, and I think it's super important for all of you that are getting into the industry to use the time, use the opportunity, and strike while the iron is hot. Do not stand for it, right? At this point, everyone's talking about it. Do not let anyone get by. Call them out. Let's make sure that this is an unacceptable behavior. Of course, don't do it in a way where you're being offensive or anything like that. But yes, like, that needs to be talked about openly. Hey, that's a microaggression. We shouldn't do this. So yeah, I would encourage everyone to do the same thing.
just being a minority woman in finance, I definitely, not direct aggressions against me, but you definitely see things happen in the workplace that seems to be like a gender imparity or some bias towards a minority. And I think my approach is just to not ignore it, but just stay confident in who I am. And, you know, like they talk about sitting at the table, you know, when I go into a meeting, I think early on in my career, it was always my instinct to sit back or sit on the side or let someone else have the chair. But, you know, now I just go in a lot more confident, sit at the table, voice my opinions, and just, you know, making myself be equal in my head, making sure that I feel equal to people by the way I come across in the workplace.
Awesome, thank you.
I think I could also add just a little bit that, you know, part of the reason why I left the big firm was exactly that. You know, being the only, at the time, I know that there are other lawyers who are South Asian now, but at the time I was the only South Asian. And so I would get, you know, all these different comments about, you know, how, you know, do you worship a cow? And they would, you know, they would say all kinds of different things that were just not, you know, always made you feel like you were somewhat different. In fact, there was one situation when I was very new at the firm. There was someone who was of counsel who was training the 21 of us who had newly joined the firm. And he was of British origin, had the British accent, and he called me out and said in front of everyone else during this litigation training, I know your people, and your people don't teach women how to speak up. And I could feel the blood boiling inside of me. And I responded and said, and I don't know how it even came to me at the time because I was so mad, and when I'm mad, I don't usually think like that. I just responded that, well, my people had, you know, a female prime minister, and we still don't have that here. Anyway, that was just an example of a situation from back then. And I spent 3 years there and then left, and having my own practice gave me, you know, sort of the freedom to be myself. And it's funny because as I was leaving the big firm, there was someone who asked me, well, you know, it was this assumption about what other South Asians or Indians might think of a female attorney. Well, how are you going to develop clientele? Because, you know, don't they, you know, women are not treated equally, you know? And I said, you know, actually, I don't think that's exactly right. I mean, my parents, both my mother and my father were physicians. I didn't really grow up with that concept of that, you know, as a female, I was less. And so I basically pointed out, I thought that the problem was more persistent within the firm than it was within my own cultural group. Or at least, you know, there are people, you know, even within the United States who behave that way. So you can't very well say that just because I'm South Asian and I'm going off on my own, that I was going to have this problem. But, you know, one of the things that's been beneficial to me is that I'm also a member of Lawyers Club, and Lawyers Club in San Diego is a female bar association. We promote women in the law and society. And so within our organization, we have a diverse women's committee. And the diverse women's committee gets together to talk about these things on a monthly basis, which is very helpful. And through that diverse women's committee, we've actually been able to promote and support women who have now become judges. So people who have led that committee have ended up on that path. So it's been very fruitful.
Thank you. And then our last question before we wrap up, this student was asking, do you guys have any financial advice to college students or young professionals starting out into the workforce after college? And especially during COVID, with a lot of people being furloughed and being laid off, just general like financial advice.
My 2 cents on that is this too shall pass. I wouldn't worry about this for the long term. Yes, in the short term, a lot of people will hurt. Some of you may also be hurting. Humanity is very resilient. We are strong, and we will get through this, and our community is strong, and we will help each other rise through this. I believe that 100%. So I will say, like, do not worry about your current financial situation. Think long term. Squirrel away that $10 a month, $20 a month, $100 a month, whatever you can do. Invest for the long term. Don't day trade, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I would just add to that, you know, go back with your parents, let them support you for a little bit longer. They'll love it. And I'm sure most of you are probably back with your parents right now anyway. I'm sure that they're enthusiastic about having you there. You know, these, just like Jamit was saying, this time will pass, but it's also an amazing time to reflect on things that are important. Right? Look at, who would have imagined 3 months ago we'd be in this situation? And so we've taken an opportunity to really think about what's important in life. You guys should take that same opportunity. It probably won't occur again, perhaps in our lifetime, something like this that's so disruptive that allows you to really think about what's important. Financially, I think this is a time to be as austere as you can personally, right? If there are some expenses that you've got that you can shed, certainly encourage you to do that. But the market's going to recover. It's going to come back, and you want to continue to stay sharp with your skills. This is a time to learn, continue to educate where you can. Many of you guys probably aren't even going back to, I know some people that are just gotten into college and decided to go to their local universities versus the ones that they got accepted to, just because they're not even sure if it's going to open up. So we're in a very, very difficult and different time. But just have optimism. This is not unlike other obstacles people have faced. Imagine either your parents or their parents, when they came here, they had some real challenges, right? Whether it was a language barrier, or whether it was microaggressions, or just overt racism, or there's so many. You're going to have different challenges in life. This is no different than any other. But be smart about how you invest. Be smart about how you save. But be deliberate in whatever profession you're choosing, and continue to strengthen your skills there. And eventually this stuff will work its way out.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for the students and professionals for asking those questions. We're going to wrap up, so I'm going to hand it off to Jay, who will give his closing remarks.
Thanks, Anmeet. And just to pause for a second, again, to our panel, for all of you, thank you so much for coming, because even just for the mentors in the Sikh Professional Network group, this is an incredibly helpful conversation, and it is great to be able to hear from your guys' life experience. And we really appreciate you guys taking the time to come here. I'm sure if we didn't have everyone muted, we could actually get you an applause, but Zoom's kind of hard to work sometimes. But so one, thank you guys. And then two, for the broader audience, again, our goal with the DC Metro Area Sikh Professional Network is to help us all build a community where we're helping each other, whether that's developing professional skills, just asking for general advice, resume, life, whatever, or just trying to talk to people who are in a similar life experience as us. All of that is stuff that we want to help you with. I'm going to send a link both on the Facebook chat, or both on the Facebook group for this event, and in our chat in just a couple seconds, where you can click on a Facebook link and like our page, where we'll post more events like this, hopefully down the road. Or if you just have general questions, you can reach out to us on that page too, and we can either have connect you with a mentor who can help, or try to answer your questions other ways. But one, we also want to thank you guys for coming to the event, because this is our community. We're at 40-something people now. That's a lot on one Zoom call. and we really appreciate you all. But before I say anything else, panelists, is there anything else you'd like to say to the group?
Yeah, wonderful job, Jay and Sanmeet and the rest of the organizing committee over here. You guys have done a fantastic service for this group here. So I just wanted to say kudos to you.
I agree with Jamit that this too shall pass, and with Sunny that we should face this with optimism. I have to remind you all to please wear your masks until that happens, and please be careful, wash your hands, social distancing. This is not the time to be complacent. And as many of you know, our community has not been immune to COVID, and we're not done yet. So please take care of your loved ones and your elderly and your parents, and just be mindful. We will get through this, but not too fast.
I just wanted to offer, I already sent it through the chat, but if anyone would like to speak with me separately, just contact Jay or Kieran, and I'd be happy to do that too. And I think this was a great idea, great event. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just echo the other panelists, and if anyone has any more finance-related questions, I'm happy to answer them. So feel free to reach out to Jay and me, Kieran, and get my contact information.
Again, same thing. If there are any other additional questions, please reach out. Thank you guys for organizing. I found it very valuable. I actually learned a lot about my wife today. It was quite nice. No, it was fantastic. Happy to do it again whenever you guys like.
Again, all of you guys are great. Thank you so much. I hope everyone on this call has a great rest of your Sunday. Again, fill out that survey. It's only 2 minutes, very short. And if you do want to speak to any of the panelists or other mentors, reach out to me. I'm in that Facebook group, or Kieran or Sunmeet, and we'll make sure to connect you with the right people. And have a great weekend, guys. Bye.
Enjoy your weekend.